You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest Amara Enyia. She is one of what I'd call the 10 major candidates running for mayor in the city of Chicago. Any one of these candidates has the resources, the know-how, the ability, the possible name recognition to win and become your next mayor of the city of Chicago. So I think I have it right. I mean, I'm assuming that these 10 I'll name in a second will all get on the ballot. That is, you will all file enough signatures so that even with challenges, you'll survive. You have filed your petitions. We're taping this on November 29th, right? You filed, right?
Yes, we filed on Monday, which was the final day, and we filed 62,000 signatures to get on the ballot.
Okay, so she's got like almost 50,000 extra.
Precisely, and the most of any candidate that's filed in this election.
Wow. Okay, so she is a millennial. No, you're not. You're 1 year over a millennial. Is
Apparently,
that right?
Apparently I am. The millennial generation is, I think, those that are 18 to 37. So apparently I'm 2 years still in the millennial category. 18
to 37?
Apparently, yes.
Okay, so I was thinking it was 34, but I'm wrong. Okay, so she is a millennial. And she, other than Jamal, who's not within my top 10, and Jamal, nothing personal, I'm just not thinking whatever. Okay, but Jamal is like 28, no, 22, something?
I'm not quite sure,
He's
but
young.
definitely
He's young.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but at 35 of those 10, the next, the closest to you in age, not that ageism, I'm like that. Ageist, okay? Because I'm like Methuselah, I'm 969, so you know, you can't accuse me of being an ageist, right? Okay. So Susana Mendoza, she's I think 46.
Okay.
Yes, she was a state rep, the youngest state rep way back when you were a toddler, like in 2000. Okay, she was 28, so she was the youngest as a state rep. So okay, enough of that. Preckwinkle. I'm sort of doing it not necessarily in the order of their favorite or whatever. Tony Preckwinkle, Gary McCarthy, Paul Vallis, Susana Mendoza, Willie Wilson, Amara Enyia, Bill Daley. You all know who these folks are, so I have to tell you. Dorothy Brown, Gary Chico, Lori Lightfoot. Those are 10, okay? If you want to do it, okay, throw in LaShawn, my good friend LaShawn Ford. He's waiting in the wings to become number 10 in there. You know LaShawn?
I do.
He could be like your state rep. You live in Garfield, that's West Side, right?
Yes, I live in Garfield.
He's the West Side. So
yes.
Is he your state rep?
He's not my state rep, but a lot of the work I do in Austin, he represents a large part of the Austin community.
Because what do you do in Austin?
So I have done a number of things. I was a nonprofit executive for a number of organizations. I currently run the Austin Chamber of Commerce, and I do a lot of economic development projects in the Austin community, as well as education work as well. So I've worked with him in that regard.
So what's your position now in Austin? You're the
executive director of the Chamber of Commerce.
Austin Chamber of Commerce. Okay, and so you are, well, some people might think you are a progressive, right?
Yeah, well, Is
that generally how you describe yourself ideologically?
It's how I'm described. Prior to any of those labels, I've always been very clear and very strong on certain values, and that's been reflected in my work. And so but that's a descriptor that's often used to describe me.
So can you be pro-business if you're a progressive?
Well, so you certainly can. So the work, especially when we talk about the work that I do with the Chamber, it is about creating a vibrant local economy for the West Side, which for those who know about that side of town, it really struggles economically. And so the small business community is an absolutely crucial part of the economy. And we have to address those issues because it affects everything from hiring to safety to economically viable commercial corridors. You can't have a discussion about improving communities without incorporating the small business sector.
Or as my good friend Pete Giangreco, do you know Pete? He's a Democratic Party consultant.
Yes.
Campaign consultant. Did a lot of work for Obama. Obama once looked over in like 2004 when Obama won the Democratic primary nomination for the U.S. Senate, saw Pete out in the crowd that evening and said, "Oh, Pete's the guy who makes me look pretty." I mean, Pete does a lot more than that. That's not bad. That's not bad, right? Okay, so as Pete would say, he's been on the show before, he says, you know, Jeff, we have to remember that without employers, you can't have employees. And so if you are focused on having more people with jobs and more employees, you can't treat your employers well, right?
Well, certainly. I mean, I talk a lot about what it means to build wealth in communities and to build generational wealth. And typically, the pathways to wealth building are through ownership. And so, a lot of my platform is about creating entrepreneurs, but also creating owners. And we can do that in a number of ways. I do focus on the small business sector in particular, but we also talk about innovative models, cooperative models of ownership that are options, especially in communities that have struggled, because we want people to be earning more so that they can stay in their communities and support their communities.
Okay, so what we're going to do what we're going to do is somewhat unusual. I've watched some of your interviews, like your interview with my good friend Dan Proft,
Okay.
my good friend Ben Jaworski.
Yes, yes.
Very different. They're different worlds, right?
Yes.
There's Ben. Ben's left. I got to put my left hand right. Ben's left, right?
Yes.
Dan's right. Not he's right, correct. He's on the right, okay? But one thing that was absent, my good friends, like there are three, I would say four, maybe major issues. Major issues. They were major issues in 2011 when Rahm came here. They were major issues in 2015 when he ran for re-election. They were major issues in 2019. I don't think you folks did so much of that. So you tell me, what are the three major issues
That the city of Chicago is facing?
that the city of Chicago is facing and that every candidate for mayor should address in every interview, in my view? What are those three major issues?
Well, I would say probably the top issue that I talk about is the state of the city's economy, which also includes its fiscal health, not only for now, but for the future. So when I talk about the economy, that includes the state of the business climate. It includes workforce development and how we're training people for the jobs of the future. It includes the pension issue. It includes revenue and how the city can generate revenue. That's really the foundational component.
Economy, and you mentioned we'll
Yes.
come back to pensions, okay?
Yes.
So that's number one. Number two?
Education.
Education. And what are those subcategories of education?
So equity in education, making sure that every child actually has access to a quality school in the city of Chicago, making sure that they have access to the resources that they need to have a quality educational experience, and making sure that we're preparing people for life after high school. That has to be a foundational philosophy for CPS.
Do we empower parents? Do we want to empower parents?
Yes, we have to empower parents.
We have to.
Yes.
You want to do that?
Yes, we have to, because we want parents to feel good about sending their kids to Chicago public schools. Over the last several years, the population of CPS has actually been declining. And what that means is fewer dollars to actually fund our schools. If parents don't feel empowered and that they have a say in their child's education, then they're going to take their children elsewhere to find a place where they can feel comfortable about where they're sending their kids.
Okay, so we've got the economy handled, and everybody's got a high-quality job, and everybody's getting a high-quality education.
Yes.
You've gotten that done in your first 2 months, okay? You can kick back.
Sure.
What's the third issue that's on your mind?
Well, the third big issue is addressing violence and taking a different approach to violence and public safety in the city. For so long, violence has always been talked about as a policing issue, when in fact, it is the result of our public policy failings across the board. Everything from public health hazards that people are exposed to that can create impulsive behavior, from not investing in mental health and behavioral health services in communities and schools, in not investing in an inclusive economy where people have options to work legally. Those are the things that actually create an environment where violence is able to manifest, yet we don't talk about that. We only talk about police infrastructure and police officers. So we have to reframe that conversation so that we can invest in communities in ways that reduce violence and make our neighborhoods more safe.
Okay, so you went to law school, right?
I did.
So let's play. Let's play you're on the stand, okay?
Okay.
And I'm like doing cross, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I'll show you Exhibit A. Look at that exhibit. What do you see? Years and numbers. Do those seem familiar to you? We're talking violence?
Yes.
We're talking, what are those numbers? Take a guess.
These
What
are
do you think?
homicides.
Yeah, tell people a little bit about what that sheet says.
So from 2011, 450 homicides, 2016, which was a pivotal year.
Summarize 2011 to 2015 quickly.
2011 to 2015, homicides were between 450 and 500 per year.
Okay, so just think. Here's a little plug, maybe, an idea. You know Gary McCarthy, right? Mm-hmm. Former cop.
Yes.
Former police chief, city of Chicago, brought in by Rahm, okay? Mm-hmm. Wonder kid at the time. We brought him in when he came in, 2011-12. When he left, homicides were sort of in that range of less than, they had gone down from 500 into the 400s, right?
Yes,
Okay.
the peak in 2012.
So he
and
left,
then down
I
480.
think, a year after Laquan McDonald. We'll talk
Yes.
about that. So in 2015, when he left, I think,
It
I'd
was
say he was terminated.
480.
Okay, what happened in 2016?
2016 up by 58% at 762.
762? That's like, those are homicides. Those are
Yes.
deaths.
Yes.
Okay. Like what happened?
Well, a lot of things happened. One thing that we can't forget is that there was an effort to reclassify homicides also within those years when Gary McCarthy was chief of police or police superintendent. And so what that meant is how homicides are being classified. If it didn't fit with a very narrow definition, then it wasn't classified as a homicide. So that could artificially drive down numbers. Hence, you're seeing this big jump in 2016.
You mean when he was there as police chief, numbers may have been driven down by definition.
Precisely.
Some
So
of
that
it.
just has to be
But
taken
did that
into account.
change in 2016? Did they redefine it?
So a light was shown on that issue, and then some adjustments were made. So it doesn't say that that's the only reason for the increase, but
Do
we
you
have to
think
take that into
homicides
account.
went way up in 2016? Is that your?
They
if you had
did
to
go
give, they did. Not by definition. There were more
Just in
homicides.
reality.
There were more deaths.
Yes.
And where were most of those homicides?
Most of the homicides are relegated to certain communities, mainly on the city's south and west side.
South and west side. You're on the west side.
Yes.
You live on the west side.
I-
You live
yes.
in Garfield Park.
Yes.
And a month or two ago, maybe it was longer. Remember that weekend when there were, what, 74
70, yeah.
shootings, 12 fatalities? Did that hit your neighborhood?
Yes, I live in, I think, the number 2
There
or
were
number
4
3
areas, they said, where
community.
they had to redeploy. Were you one of those 4
I live in a
police areas?
community that is probably number 2 or 3 for the number of
Okay.
homicides and shootings.
Okay, and they're playing cross. We'll come back to this, but we want to focus on this.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like to make it so everybody has a quality education, I think. You want
Yes.
to do that. You want to have a job and life is good, but they have to be safe.
Yes,
We can't say in 20 years they'll be safe.
right.
Like tomorrow, it's November 29th. I mean, the pressure's on. If you get elected, if you win on February 26th, which is, you'll be seeing these folks probably in the second week in December, there'll be like 10 weeks left for the election. 10 candidates. That number keeps coming up, 10-10, okay? But if you win, there's no runoff. So if you get more than a majority on February 26th, is that going to happen?
That's the goal.
That's the goal. So if you do that, like, okay, it takes a while, you're mayor-elect. You would become mayor when, in May or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Middle of May.
People want you to do something now,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Pressure's on.
Yes.
Like now, Jeff, be quiet. You got like 19 minutes, maybe 16 minutes left. Give this poor woman, young lady, a
But the
chance to talk.
challenge when we talk about violence is that the city has never actually addressed the root causes. And so it has been very reactionary. The easy thing to do is to focus on police and police infrastructure as opposed to getting to the root causes, which are all tied to investment and to resources, especially in those challenged communities. So we have to start there if we're serious about reducing violence and creating safe communities that can also be economically vibrant, have quality schools, and high quality
But
of life.
can you address the root causes in the short run? Can you do it if you become mayor in May? Can you in June of 2019, in July, in those first 2 months, can you do that? And
Yes.
You know, we used to say in presidents, like the first 100 days was a big deal. You're too young to remember. They don't even say that now. They've given up on the first 100 days. They almost want the country just to survive. Okay, a little joke. But do you have to, in that first 60, 90 days, put off some of the long run things? You can start doing that, but do you have to say, let's really make sure these homicides start getting down now?
You can start addressing violence in the short and long term in the first 100 days. There are a couple of things that can be done immediately, especially if we look to an example, public health hazards. So exposure to neurotoxins like lead in the water or manganese in the soil on the southeast side actually creates biological deficiencies that create impulsive behavior that can manifest as violence, especially in young people.
Well, that would be
The
short run.
city-
Will that
that's
do
short
it?
run.
Will that, in the next 2 months, decrease homicides? If you did that, would it decrease homicides in June or July of 2019?
But it's not an either or.
Well,
If
do
we're
both.
talking
Okay.
about
Okay.
reducing
But
violence.
I want you to focus just for a minute. Do what I want, please. The short run. I'm shifting. We're going to start this show right now on violence. We got like 3 or 4 minutes, okay? So we want to hit those other 2 major issues,
Sure.
okay? So 2 months. Tell me, you ever hear of ShotSpotter?
Yes.
What's ShotSpotter?
ShotSpotter is a technology that identifies where shootings take place. It's used by the police department. McCarthy was one of the big proponents of it.
Is it useful?
It can be useful. But the police department has never said that they don't know where shootings are taking place and they don't know the shooters. In fact, they've said the opposite, and yet we still see what those homicide rates are.
We'll come back to that point. That's a key point. Okay, so it's helpful, but it's not like a strategic plan. Because when you ask Rom, what are you doing about violence? Oh yeah, my strategic plan is shot spotter. It's not. It's a tool, right? It's like, what do they call these SDRCs? Strategic something resource centers. It's a technological thing. These guys and ladies drive around. They have these computers. They have data-driven stuff of what's going on, right?
Yes.
I got the acronym wrong. Do you know what it is?
Well, so
strategic what? What do you know?
You said
Okay.
SDRC, but the point is
something like that.
Using technology is not a strategic plan overall for reducing violence. It's a tool.
It's a tool
that the police department uses.
Okay, so you got to something that was really key, because you alluded to, we know where the shootings are.
Yes.
In fact, some people say, Eddie Johnson said a year or two ago, we know, we have a list of 1,800 people, and 90% of the perps or the victims will come from that list.
Yes.
So that's what you're saying. So wouldn't it make sense to try to sit down and talk with those 1,800 and say, like, you're in harm's way, what can we do to help you? Or you're about to kill somebody and go away for a long time. Will probably not be, the clearance rate is so low, you may get away with murder. But why don't we focus on those 1,800, not to like go after them, but prevent homicides from occurring tomorrow, right?
Yeah. So
could you do that if you were mayor?
Yes, and
could
that's
you focus
where
on that?
That's where the interventions are necessary.
Okay.
So actually investing in building community-driven infrastructure that can help residents monitor their own communities, because sometimes residents know who some of those perpetrators are. We used to have a very strong block club culture in the city. We used to have what they were calling community area policing, and yet they cut the budget for those programs. We could actually target in the 10 most violent communities and actually invest in building block club infrastructure where residents have the resources to monitor their blocks, to be the eyes and ears on their blocks, and work in partnership with the police department, as opposed to simply talking about investing more in police infrastructure. That's a preventative measure.
So a lot of these tools are there. We have state agencies who could provide some of these services. We have city agencies. We have county. We have other things. We have not-for-profit, civilian groups in these areas. So this guy, Gary McDougall, you know that guy?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, Google him. Twice in the Wall Street Journal, he's written about this in the last year. He says, one of the things, he's big on mentoring. Like, mentor these 1,800 kids. People have a list of like 3,000. It's another list of people who might be street hustlers, okay? They may be involved in what you might call relatively minor drug crimes, selling drugs, okay? But occasionally they get involved in protecting their turf and shooting. 3,000 or so of these potential or actual criminals. Don't make a list and say, I know you're a bad guy. Make a list and talk to these folks, because what Gary says, they'd like a job. They'd be happy. You don't know this. You know who I'm talking about. If these young men and young women could work for $15 an hour or $30 an hour, you think they want to sit there and risk their life?
But this is the point earlier when I talked about addressing the root cause of violence as investment. If we don't invest in creating economically viable communities, then what jobs will those individuals get? Yeah. The other point that we really don't talk enough about is in the philanthropic sector, many of those nonprofits that are at the front line working with these more challenged populations are not getting the funding that they should be getting to do this work.
Okay.
So the mayor can actually use the pulpit to encourage philanthropy to invest in those local nonprofits that are at the front lines of doing a lot of that.
Should we focus on that
work.
list of 3,000?
That's a clear target area of individuals.
Can we get people to talk to them? Can we try to get volunteer mentors?
I know from my work,
is this all, am I just saying stuff, or are you and I in agreement on this?
No, we're definitely in agreement, and I'm probably one of the few individuals who's actually done grassroots organizing work, who's worked in the nonprofit sector. I know many organizations that actually work with that population in particular, and a lot of times they struggle because they can't get access to philanthropic dollars. They get overlooked even by city agencies for the work that they do. That's what we have to address also, to intervene in their lives.
Okay, so we're starting to get our hands around the short-run problem. The longer-run problem is make sure these these young men and women are capable of getting jobs.
Yes.
If they dropped out of high school, they may need to get a GED.
Yes.
Sometimes you can do that in 6 weeks. We need to figure out how to get to them, how to sell them on that, get them off the streets.
We also need to make sure that we're creating pipelines into jobs in the economy that don't require a four-year degree, of which there are many. I've worked in the workforce development space, key sectors like advanced manufacturing, information technology, coding. They don't require a four-year degree, and if we develop pipelines, we can actually shift some of those individuals into economically viable careers.
So why isn't that being done? Toni Prankwell has been Cook County Board President. We hope to have Toni on soon. We'll ask her. We've had Gary McCarthy on. Paul Vallis has been CEO of CPS. Okay, these are the older folks, okay? Like 70, 60 something, okay? So are you going to say in a forum, like, why haven't you done this?
Well, the people...
that's a question. If you were here with Toni Prankwell,
yes,
what would you say to Toni about what we've just talked about? I know she's not been mayor, but she's been Cook County Board President.
Sure.
Has she tried to get this? Has she tried to get a discussion with the 1,800, with the 3,000?
Well, I can't speak to what she's attempting to do.
Would you ask her if she should have done that?
What I can say is the current issues that we're facing are the results of the current class of leadership in this city, without a doubt. Okay. And people are saying that they want something different, they want something more. So if you are in positions of power and leadership, and yet these are the circumstances that we're experiencing, the logical next step is to say we need a different vision, a different kind of leadership that can actually move the city forward.
So that's a good segue into education, because you are Ms. Education, right? What do you got? An undergraduate degree in journalism from University of Illinois
and political
Champaign.
Science.
And political science.
Yes.
You got a master's degree from the same institution, University of Illinois Champaign. Yes. Master's degree in what?
Education.
Education.
Yes.
PhD in?
Education policy.
Same institution. Law degree?
Yes.
Same institution. Like, you may be overeducated. You may be overqualified. Seriously.
I like schools that have a lot of loans.
Okay. So you know this stuff
yes.
on theory. The question is, somebody might say, at 35, do you have enough experience to know the practice?
Yes.
Not the theory.
I've worked
to get
in
it done.
practice actually for more than 10 years, both in government. I've taught for a couple of years. I've been organizing against many of the things that we've seen happening in CPS for a number of years.
Okay, so do this right now.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the pop quiz. November 29th, Chicago Tribune, sexual violence claims flood CPS. Sexual violence claims flood CPS. Give us a minute. What happened 6 months ago? What did we hear about from the Tribune about sexual assaults? What's happening today? And what would you do about it right now? Because they're not worried. They say, this is great. From our reading of it, they're saying, because now we've told people they should report, so they're reporting.
Yeah.
Did they have that right? And then Janice Jackson is the CEO. The city council has a hearing, and she doesn't go. The state legislature has a hearing, and she doesn't go. Say, where the hell are you, Janice? We've asked for you to be on the show. You should be getting in touch with me. You don't like what I just said? She should get in touch with me. Do you like Janice?
So I think she came in a very challenging time with CPS, and what we have seen over the last several months with the sexual violence cases, this was the story that broke.
Give it to us in a minute. What happened?
Where it was discovered that there were hundreds of cases of sexual violence that were not reported, that CPS did not act in many of those cases. And it took a Tribune story exposing this for CPS to begin to scramble to do things like implementing background checks and actually taking seriously many of these cases. This is symptomatic of how CPS has operated for so long. We're also dealing with the state having to take over special education in CPS because they were denying children their federally entitled rights, special needs children in the district. I worked on that for more than a year.
Okay, but here's what I was thinking. For the last 10 years, there's been a credible complaint of a sexual assault or harassment of an adult, of a faculty member, of an employee of CPS on a student. For the last 10 years, every other week, a credible complaint. Fast forward to the last 3 months, there's like, what is it? It's almost one a day of an adult, okay?
Yes.
I mean, 143 complaints in the last 3 months. That's about 60 working days. And one of those is a person adults working for CPS, and one is not. So, like, okay, 143, there's 60 days. It's one a day. I don't know if they're credible, but Janice should be jumping up and down to find out. No. I mean, are you going to say, I know she had a tough time. She came in, but she's been there, and she was the chief academic officer. So enough
Chief education
excuses.
officer.
If you come in, is Janice going to be you going to tell the board, as Ram does, to keep her there or not keep her there? Because the mayor runs the board, right?
Yes. Well, first of all, I favor an elected school
I know,
board.
but we don't know. Answer that question. We've got like only about 3 or 4 minutes.
And second,
Just tell everybody can find out your platform where?
on amaraenyia.com.
Okay, so we don't have to repeat that here.
Sure.
Apply the platform. What would you do with Janice? What would you do with the situation? Same thing, short run, long run. In the short run, what do you do? In the long run, what do you do?
The short run was definitely to shine a light on these cases and to actively move on these cases. That was the problem. They had to be forced by the media.
Are we doing it now?
That's what they're doing now, but she has to be present at the hearings the city council
We're
held.
still getting a lot of complaints and allegations. She's got to be on top of it as to if these are credible and if something's being done.
Right, she has to be on top of it, but
Now.
also
Okay.
out of these hearings, we should get recommendations on how how CPS should proceed. That means they have to be present and they have to be responsive.
So in 30 seconds, you know, you're 10 people and you're competing for mayor. Competition is good, right?
Sure.
Wouldn't it be good if we had competition for the parents sending their kids to those schools? Wouldn't it be good if we offered them a select enrollment, if we offered them a charter school, if we offered them a parochial school, if we offered them a voucher school, if we offered them a traditional neighborhood school? Let competition reign. You know, wouldn't that be empowering to parents?
It's not empowering if some parents are left out. It shouldn't be that you have to struggle to get into a selective enrollment school to get a good education. It shouldn't be that you have to choose between a charter and a public to get a good education.
Not have to. Why not give them the choice?
Because a public school system's primary responsibility is to make sure that every child has access to a quality education.
But it doesn't work. We've been doing it for 20 years of reform, and it's not any good.
But competition.
Should we try something new and say, give them a choice, a true choice, the kind that rich people have?
But the choice between two bad options is not a choice for
Charter
parents.
schools, they're
but
bad
charter
options?
schools, the research actually shows, are not outperforming public neighborhood schools, and we're finding that out now. So if you're having a choice between a charter and a public, and they're performing on par, then where is the choice? Moreover, what we're finding is that schools are now competing with each
Peyton,
other.
is Peyton a performer? Is
That's
Jones Prep? Is Northside
those are
College
selective
Prep?
enrollment
Whitney Young,
schools.
so they're performers.
Those are selective enrollment
Okay, those are
schools.
select. What about Pritzker College Prep? What is that? Noble Street. What
Those
is
are charter
Chicago
schools.
Bulls? Are they performers? Chicago Math and Science Academy. So as far as I know, they're performers.
Those are charter schools.
Yeah, they're doing well.
Right, but what about, there are many charter schools in the city, many neighborhood
Yes,
schools.
get rid of the ones that are bad, charter or traditional, and the ones that are good, let them flourish. Okay, we got like 2 minutes to deal with pensions. Way too little. We'll get you back, right? You'll do
Good
this?
luck. Sure.
You'll do this? Okay.
We can try.
Okay. You've said, I think, there's 35 billion that Chicago has of unfunded pension
Sure,
liabilities.
liability.
But actually, if you look at Chicago's share of the state, if you're a Chicago citizen, if you look at Chicago's share of the county, that number rises to 130 billion. What it means is, on average, every household owes 125,000, which they can't pay. That's like a major problem. So I know we only got like a minute, but either half, it seems to me, you got to amend the Constitution, which allows you to cut benefits so everybody has a haircut, not just the pensioners, not just the teachers. People get less in current services. Bondholders get less, because it's such a massive number. You can't cure this with casinos, can you? You can't.
No.
You might help. So, would you like to amend the Illinois Constitution so you could diminish benefits?
Well, what's interesting is that's such a long-term proposal when there are some shorter-term things that can be done, such as re-amortizing our pension debt, such
Puts
as
it
actually
off for another day.
identifying.
Puts it off for another day.
It doesn't, but it's a shorter-term proposal that we can implement. We
2
identifying
years. You could
sources
amend
of
the Constitution
revenue
in 2 years.
with the state. At the state level, that's not a guarantee.